Good morning, everybody, and thank you for your patience. Welcome to this briefing on the report Developments in the Economy of the Occupied Palestinian Territory. This report is part of the long-standing mandate of UN Trade and Development of UNCTAD to the UNCTAD Trade and Development Board to monitor and assess economic conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory. Many of us refer to them also as OPT. The report provides an annual and evidence-based analysis to inform the international community. And today we're presenting it to the media. We're joined here to my right, your left, by Pedro Manuel Moreno, the Deputy Secretary General of UNCTAD, and Mutasim, Elagraa, the coordinator of UNCTAD's assistant to the Palestinian unit, and our colleague Rami, who will also provide additional insights if requested. The Deputy Secretary General will open with context and key messages from the report. Mr. Elagraa will then walk us through the findings in more detail. After both speakers, we will open the floor for Q&A. And as I said, our colleague Rami Alazzeh, who's also the Economic Affairs Officer of UNCTAD's assistance to the Palestinian People Unit, will also be standing by to assist. Many thanks, and dear DSG, the floor is yours.
Good morning again. Thank you, Marcelo. As Marcelo already noted, this report focuses on the economic situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. What we see today is extremely worrying. The prolonged military operation, combined with long-standing restrictions, has pushed the economy of the occupied Palestinian territory into its deepest decline on record. Much of the infrastructure, productive assets, and public services have been damaged or destroyed, wiping out decades of progress. The result is one of the deepest and worst economic crises seen anywhere in recent decades. The situation in Gaza is especially severe. Gaza is going through the fastest and most damaging economic collapse ever recorded. In 2024, its GDP contracted by 83% compared with 2023, following another sharp drop the previous year. GDP per capita fell to just $161, or less than 50 cents per day, among the lowest in the world. The destruction of infrastructure, the loss of productive capacity, and the displacement of the population have caused long-term harm to people and to their ability to earn a living. The West Bank is also facing its worst downturn on record. Rising insecurity, strict movement and access restrictions, and the loss of productive opportunities in many sectors led to a 17% drop in GDP in 2024. GDP per capita fell by almost 19%. At the same time, the Palestinian government's ability to respond has further weakened. Revenue shortfalls, withheld fiscal transfer, and falling external support have put severe pressure on public finances, limiting essential public services. Since October 2023, the fiscal situation has deteriorated sharply, making 2024 one of the hardest years the government has faced. UNCTAD stresses that urgent and steady international financial support is needed to stabilize public finances, protect key institutions, and create the conditions for recovery and reconstruction. Our report calls for a comprehensive recovery plan for the occupied Palestinian territory. This includes coordinated international assistance, the restoration of fiscal transfers, and steps to ease restrictions on trade, movement, and investment. According to estimates from the UN, the European Union, and the World Bank, more than $70 billion will be needed to rebuild Gaza. This figure reflects both the scale of destruction and the long path to recovery, even with strong growth and generous aid. But above all, a lasting ceasefire reached in October 2025 is essential for any meaningful recovery. Humanitarian assistance also remains urgent and cannot wait. As our Secretary General, Rebecca Greenspan, said yesterday, we welcome the Security Council resolution on the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. The ceasefire offers a critical opportunity not only to end the suffering of millions, but also to begin addressing the economic damage outlined in this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moreno, for setting out the context and the main findings. We now turn to Mr. Mutasim Elagraa. Again, I repeat his title, for the record, coordinator of UNCTAD's Assistance to the Palestinian People Unit. He will provide a more detailed overview on economic impacts and, of course, the challenges that all of this entails. Mr. Elagraa, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As you know, UNCTAD prepares 2 reports every year, one of them to the General Assembly on the economic cost of occupation, and another report to the UN Trade and Development Board on recent development in the economy of the Occupied Palestinian Territory. This press conference is about the latter, but I encourage you to also see our report to the General Assembly on the cost of occupation, because it gives details about the West Bank, the situation in the West Bank. The situation in Gaza has been catastrophic, as you all know, but the situation is also dire in the West Bank, and you can see that with some details in our report to the General Assembly, which is available online. Here I will highlight key points in our report to the Trade and Development Board. I will start by saying that history did not start in October 2023. The current situation unfolding since 2023 is the latest chapter in a 58-year occupation, one of the longest in recent history. For decades, occupation has suppressed the Palestinian economy, and the key mechanisms of suppression include, this is not all of them, but some of them are most important among them, are the repeated military operations that shattered the Palestinian infrastructure in Gaza and the West Bank. Most notable and most devastating military operation happened more recently in 2008, 2009, 2012, 2014, 2021, and 2022. So the military operations that started in 2023 come as part of a long series of repeated destruction of Palestinian infrastructure. Another suppression mechanism is the blockade on Gaza, which has been in effect since 2007. Since then, entry of goods into Gaza was very much restricted, and it has been limited mainly to humanitarian and consumer goods. Importation of critical inputs was banned or restricted. The importation of critical technology was also very much restricted. This hollowed the economy and stripped it of its capacity to produce and grow. Third, the separation of the West Bank from Gaza and East Jerusalem prevents the emergence of a cohesive, integrated Palestinian economy. So what we have are disconnected islands that are not articulated and not complementary to each other. And the whole occupied Palestinian territory is very small, so dividing it into 3 regions makes development even much harder. The fourth important factor is the occupation of 60% of the West Bank. 60% of the West Bank, known as Area C, is under occupation. And that means this occupation deprives the Palestinian economy from its most valuable land, most fertile land, and most valuable natural resources. They're completely under the control of the occupying power, and Palestinian producers do not have access to these resources. And so the military operations that started in 2023 ravaged the Palestinian infrastructure in Gaza and caused also much damage to Palestinian infrastructure in the West Bank. So the situation is catastrophic in Gaza, but is also dire in the West Bank. As a result, GDP in Palestine for the national economy as a whole shrank to 69% of its 2019 level. It lost 31 percentage points compared to its level in 2019 before the COVID crisis. And GDP per capita reverted to its 2003 levels. So in 2024, GDP per capita was the same as it was in 2003. This erases 22 years of economic progress. Meanwhile, Gaza's economy shrunk to 13% of its 2022 level. So because of the latest military operations, Gaza lost 87% of its GDP. National unemployment reached 50%, and in Gaza, unemployment exceeds 80%. So now multidimensional poverty engulfs all Gazans. And also, human development at the level of the whole of Palestine has shrunk by a quarter of a century. We lost a quarter of a century of human development progress. In Gaza, we have lost 7 decades of human development. We used 70 years of human development in Gaza. As our Deputy Secretary General said, the Palestinian government now faces its worst fiscal crisis in its history. And part of the reason, well, actually, all the reasons are two. One of them is that as GDP collapsed, as the economy shrunk, the tax revenue of the government declined very much. The other reason is Israel controls 2/3 of Palestinian tax revenue because it collects taxes on Palestinian imports and transfers that money to the Palestinian government. This gives it the power to withhold these transfers or apply unilateral deductions, and it does apply unilateral deductions. These deductions and withholdings since 2019 got close to $2 billion. Now, $2 billion may not seem a lot in Switzerland or in Germany, but for a small occupied economy like Palestine, that's a lot of money. In fact, it's about 44% of Palestinian tax revenue. So if proportionally these deductions were applied to the United States, they will amount to over $2 trillion. That's quite significant, and this is at the root of the fiscal crisis suffered by the Palestinian government. And this erases progress achieved by Palestinian government in cutting its budget deficit in the last 15 years. The Palestinian government was very successful in reducing its deficit in the last 15 years, despite a very harsh environment. It's harsh economically, politically, and humanitarian needs are great, and also foreign aid has been on the decline. And yet the Palestinian government succeeded in approaching fiscal sustainability, but all this has been reversed in the last 2 years. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, settlements continue to grow. These settlements are illegal under international law. Today, or by the end of 2024, there were 147 settlements in the West Bank. They house more than 737,000 settlers. And also, these settlers practice violence against Palestinians, like torch crops, they prevent them from accessing their lands, and this happens on both sides. And in addition to the settler violence, also Israel destroys Palestinian structures built in Area C of the West Bank. And now you have the settlement growth, violence of settlers, demolition of Palestinian assets and properties. They create a coercive environment that pushes Palestinians out of their homeland and thus alters the demographic reality on the ground. This de-Palestinianization of 60% of the West Bank is contrary to international law. It deprived Palestinian people from 60% of their most valuable land, and that makes development very, very hard to achieve. As you know, in Gaza, infrastructure was destroyed, and with the destruction of the agricultural infrastructure and the destruction of the fishing industry, famine was confirmed in October 2010. Also, Gaza's human capital has been destroyed. All the schools and universities have been destroyed. Children have been out of school for more than 2 years. And this degradation of human capital will haunt society for many, many years to come. UNCTAD made recommendations for the international community. They are elaborated by Pedro. And yesterday they were elaborated by our Secretary General, Madam Rebecca Greenspan. So I will not go over them here, but we can talk about them in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this overview. Our colleague mentioned Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan, who yesterday presented this report to UNCTAD's Trade and Development Board. Let me remind me and allow you to reiterate the SG's words precisely regarding the way forward and where UNCTAD looks and welcomes at the recent Security Council resolution on the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. According to the SG, and I'm quoting her words, the ceasefire represents a critical opportunity not only to end the immediate and unbearable suffering of millions, but also to address the economic consequences that our report documents, end of quote. And this underlines really UNCTAD's mandate to examine the economic impact. And of course, our responses, and we open now the floor, will have to remain within that scope. With that said, we open the floor. You know the drill, name and media outlet before asking. We first turn to the room. If there's any, and I see, yes, this is, and I know the name, Emma from Reuters.
Thank you. Good morning. Appreciate this briefing. One is just a kind of technical question, please. You say it's the worst ever contraction. Can you just spell out what the figures are backing that up in terms of the size of the economy and the GDP, and clarify if this is for 2024? If so, do you have any projections as well for this year? And secondly, broader question, you said decades to rebuild Gaza. Can you give us an idea of the range of estimates depending on the level of support, international support? Thank you.
So in terms of the contraction, in the whole of the OPT, the Palestinian economy contracted by 30% in 2024 compared to 2022, which is the benchmark we are using to see the impact of the past 2 years. In Gaza, the economy lost 87% of its value, of its 2022 value. And in the West Bank, it lost 18% of its value of the 2022 value. When we say it's the worst economic contraction that the Palestinian economy faced since we started recording in 1972, even in the second Intifada, it did not contract on an annual basis for this much, even in COVID, even in previous conflict and escalations. Of course, Gaza's economy collapsed completely, and the West Bank economy went back to its 2014 level in real terms. In terms of, it will take decades for Gaza to be rebuilt. Even Gaza's GDP prior to 2020, in 2022, Gaza's GDP was $2.7 billion. Even for Gaza to go back in terms of GDP, to go back if the conditions allow in terms of the financing of the recovery, in terms of the restrictions to be lifted on entering of goods and stuff, it will take many years for Gaza to be able to be reconstructed. Even if we pumped billions every year to the reconstruction of Gaza, GDP will pick up in few years to the level it was at 2022, but it doesn't mean that Gaza will recover, because it will take at least the 70 billion of reconstruction and recovery money. So it will take decades for Gaza to produce more than it used to produce prior to the conflict in order to recover fully. And that's, of course, if all conditions are in the right direction.
Thank you. Yes.
Musa Asi, Al Mayadeen TV. According to your report, for a major recovery to be possible, the international community must ensure the sustainability of the ceasefire. But as you know, a ceasefire has not been definitively achieved. What does this mean for the recovery process?
But there has been a reduction in the intensity of the conflicts as a result of the latest initiatives from the international community and from governments around the world. And that reduction in the intensity of violence is welcome, but still violence continues. So development cannot take place before peace is established. And the speed of development will depend on many factors. One of them, the restoration of peace and allowing humanitarian access for humanitarian goods to enter freely into Gaza and into the West Bank. And not only humanitarian goods, but also inputs for rebuilding. What we need is humanitarian intervention plus development and reconstruction. These things are quite possible, but they need action from all sides, from the international community, from the occupying power. And what happens is it just depends on how much peace is restored, how much entry of goods is allowed. And these are not predictable, but things have been moving in a positive direction in the last few weeks. It's positive, it's slow, frustrating, but in the right direction, and we hope it continues.
Thank you. Oh, yes, a follow-up.
Regarding the agriculture sector, how is the situation now, and how many time we need to the process of recovery of this sector? Thanks.
I think the answer to the recovery of any economic sector in Gaza, it will be the same, because it's the level of destruction of all infrastructure and agricultural land. Basically, it was mainly around the border with Israel, and all of that is now is gone. So it's the recovery of any of all economic sectors will take as long as the recovery basically condition starts, where there is a withdrawal, there is the ceasefire holds, there is the reconstruction starts, where Gazans can actually rebuild their economy bit by bit. But the needs, it will take a long time, especially that the land is very now There's a lot of rubble on the ground. There is a lot of unexploded ordnance that needs to be removed. So in order to get to a safe place where you can rebuild Gaza, it will also take time and a lot of effort. So.
If I may add something here, so the destruction of the agricultural infrastructure has been extensive. And this is not only in this round of violence, but also in previous rounds of violence in 2021 and 2022. Farmlands were destroyed, agricultural equipment were destroyed, greenhouses were destroyed, the fishing industry was destroyed, fishing fleets were destroyed, and also Palestinian, even the remaining boats are not allowed to fish freely in the Sea of Gaza. And now we add to that the environmental degradation of Palestinian soil in Gaza. All this destruction, all this rubble, all these explosives, which are either they detonated or not detonated, they contaminate the land and they undermine its productivity very much. And just removing the rubble and cleaning the soil will take a lot of effort and a lot of money, and it needs serious intervention from the international community. This is why it was not a surprise that famine was declared in Gaza in October 2024. The situation is also there in the West Bank, because as I said, 60% of the West Bank is occupied, and that 60% contains the most fertile Palestinian lands, and Palestinians are not allowed to grow. They have no access to their water, and that makes food security very precarious, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. And things may move to worse with global warming and all these climate issues that affect water availability and crop yield and things like that.
Thank you. Any follow-ups from the room? Yes, Emma. Thank you.
Yeah, just on the 2025 projections, do you have anything at all to say about how it's looking?
For 2025, of course, even the ceasefires, if it keeps holding, basically it started in October, so it's the last quarter of the year. In the West Bank, the economy started not recovering. I wouldn't use, but it's basically there was a bit of growth in the first half of the year. So even if the West Bank is expected to grow around 3-4% this year compared to 2024, which was the worst, so it's coming from a low base. In Gaza, the expectation is that 2025, our projections that it's going to be a bit even less than what it was in 2024 in terms of GDP and production. This figure that basically, when we talked about why is it the worst economic crisis in recent history, Gaza's GDP per capita in 2024, and it's the same in 2025 almost, if not even less, is $161 per person per year. So $161, so it's per person per year. So we're talking about less than $50 per day per person in Gaza in 2024 and in 2025. It's the lowest GDP per capita in the world currently.
Also, regarding this worst crisis, World Bank study and data show that the crisis in Palestine as a whole ranks among the 10 worst since 1960 in the world. But for Gaza alone, it is the worst crisis on record. And that is measured by how much GDP was lost and how much it will take for the economy to bounce back. And the World Bank conclusion was reached in 2024. Now probably things are worse.
Thank you. I see one question from those connected online. Nick Cummings-Bruce from the New York Times. Thank you. Nick?
Yeah, thank you for the briefing, and thank you, for taking my question. I wondered if you could just go into a little bit. I apologize, I came a little bit late, so I apologize if I'm asking a question you already addressed, but I'm unclear about the extent of the loss of land and agricultural assets on the West Bank in the last 2 years. I wonder if you could clarify that. And I wonder also if you had an estimate of the amount of money that would be needed for the rubble clearance in Gaza. Thank you.
Regarding loss of agricultural land in the West Bank, that has been going on since 1967. Since 1967, 60% of the West Bank has been under occupation. Under the Oslo Accord, the occupying power was supposed to gradually withdraw from all of the West Bank, but that did not take place. So in 1994, the West Bank was divided into 3 regions: Area A, Area B, and Area C. Area A has been completely under the control of the Palestinian government, or at that time called the Palestinian Authority. And in Area B is under the Palestinian administrative control, but it's under the security control of Israel. So sovereignty in Area B was shared, and the security side was under the control of the occupying power. But the whole of Area C, which is 60%, has always been controlled by the occupying power, and it has been used to construct settlements. And these settlements have been growing and growing and growing over time. So there is nothing new. Even before this latest round of confrontation, Palestinians were not allowed to invest in Area C. They were not allowed to grow. They did not have access to land or water. The new thing, or the new development, is that since October 2023, the expansion of settlements have accelerated. Settlements and have accelerated, and the number of settlers has increased, and the Israeli government has been moving towards de jure annexation of these settlements to Israel proper. As we've been moving from de facto to de jure. This is only a new thing, but yeah, that I can say about this.
Thank you. If I may jump just quickly in here, on just quoting what the Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan explained yesterday, specifically on the first part of your question, Nick. Agricultural systems have been severely crippled. 86% of cropland is damaged. 83% of water wells destroyed. 71% of greenhouse damaged, and only 1.5% of farmland left to be used. 89% of water, sanitation, and hygiene assets destroyed. So this is focusing really, again, going back to the scope of the report. We're aware that, of course, everything humanitarian is intertwined with the current economic situation and the basis and the prospects. And this also, of course, relates to what will happen, and this is, of course, the question that everybody wants to have an answer for, is what are the perspectives for 2025 and beyond. At the moment, and as we saw from the Security Council resolution and how Secretary General Greenspan also applauded, we have the ceasefire. As economists say, ceteris paribus, if this holds, the basis is there from a political side to then, of course, construct economically, which is what UNCTAD is calling for. Thank you. And we have another question from the back of the room. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dina Abisab. I represent different Arabic media. My question is about the attacks of settlers. How much does it affect the Palestinian economy in general, especially with the increasing of attacks during the olive season? We saw a lot of attacks recently. Thank you.
Again, if I may jump in here, we cannot comment honestly on completely these kind of actions, nor military operations, which go beyond the scope of the report. As I said, naturally, any disruption of the normal functioning of any society has an impact in its economic prospects, be it in the occupied territories or beyond. So naturally, it doesn't help, but it's beyond, I'm afraid, the scope of what we can measure. We refer to the impact that we're capable of assessing and impacting. So it has to remain naturally along these lines. I'm afraid, unless we have specific data on it, which I'm not really certain of, but we cannot honestly comment on. We cannot comment on
effects. Economical effects, not the military, not anything else. How much does it affect the economics in general?
Other studies specific? Can we have put a number on this?
Yeah, as you said, settler violence reduces Palestinian productive activities for obvious reasons. Farmers are afraid to go to their land and to their fields. And also crops are destroyed or torched, and animals are also affected. This definitely reduces GDP, it reduces like food security, but the impact cannot be measured separately. You cannot separate it from the impact of all other factors. It's very hard to separate it and put a number on just the impact of settler violence. But it is one of many factors that are definitely harming the Palestinian economy and aggravating the economic problems.
Thank you again. Thank you for clarifying. Welcome to the latest additions into the room. So if there are no further questions online, I don't think online is anybody else. I can't see anybody. I hope I'm not missing anybody. No, doesn't seem like that. So thank you very much for attending. No, we do have somebody. Oh, I'm sorry, apologies. And we have 4 more minutes of this briefing, so we use the time. Oh, yes, again, it goes back to Nick from the New York Times. Nick.
Yeah, I just asked for a question about the cost of rubble removal. Do you have that number? Had you already given it? I'd appreciate it if you could give me that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Rubble removal.
I think we mentioned that in one of our previous reports, and we said that if the rubble removal proceeds at the same level as was the case in previous episodes, it may take about 22 years or so. But this is all hypothetical. It depends on the speed of removal. So in that report, we used the previous experiences, and that may be the case this time, and it may not be the case. So it all depends on the level of efforts exerted, and that depends on the international community and its willingness to shoulder its responsibility and provide adequate funding, and also create the political environment that allows fast movement in that direction.
But maybe and just to wrap this up, because we mentioned the figure of 70 billion US within the findings of your work. Maybe out of this, is there an estimation how much of this would be necessary for the rubble removal, for instance, which I believe is what Nick is pointing at?
But I don't think there is a separate figure, a separate reliable figure just for the rubble removal. Maybe there somewhere, but it's not mentioned in our report.
I think the rubble removal also, we have to not forget it. There's a UN report that said that it might take 10 years to remove the unexploded ordnance in Gaza, which will make the rubble remover even safer. So to make it safe to start with, it might take even 10 years to just remove the unexploded ordnance, and it will take a lot of efforts from the international community to do so.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much. Again, for attending this briefing. The headlines, of course, economic collapse. We saw the figures both from UNCTAD and also mentions to other organizations' reports. The World Bank referred to infrastructure, agriculture, fishing industry, fiscal space, income, even impacts on education. Of course, the basis of it is the current ceasefire and how the situation holds as a necessary basis for the way forward. We remain at your disposal for any follow-up, more details, or anything you need in this regard. Thank you very much.